call is now being recorded.
Okay, Bob, so tell me about your background. You went to Egg Harbor Township High School. Did you grow up in the Atlantic City area your whole life, or were you just there for high school?
No, I grew up my whole life. I grew up in Cardiff, and a little neighborhood known as Birdland, and it's right off of Tilton Road and the Black Horse Pike.
And do you still have family there?
Yeah, I do have some family in the area. Yeah, I have some family in Hamilton and in Somers Point.
And how did you get into playing the stand-up bass? You know, in high school or earlier, or how did you? It seems like an interesting choice of instrument.
Yeah, it was kind of an awkward path. I actually got out of high school and kind of drifted for a few years, and then I went to Stockton, and I got into, I always played guitar and played in local bands, and then I got into TV news, and I started shooting camera and working at TV 40 and Master Control and trying to break into that business as a technician. And I interned for WPVI, who at the time had a Margate bureau, and I was intending on getting a summer relief sound tech position in Philadelphia in 1996, and I didn't get the position. It went to someone else, and the person I interned for, Joe Torres, told me that the South was the up-and-coming market. In fact, the Olympics were in Atlanta, and he encouraged me to pack up everything I owned and drive south. And I did. I had an old station wagon, an old Dodge station wagon, and I packed up everything I had, and I drove south, and I knocked on doors and handed out resumes. And I happened to get work in Charlotte, North Carolina, but not in the TV business. They were doing a lot of film production. And I met a guy who was from South Jersey down there, and he recommended I go see a director, and I knocked on this guy's door, a guy named Jeff Smith at Oasis Films, and he had me sweeping floors and painting walls and doing all kinds of stuff for him within days. So I just stopped in Charlotte, and that's where I kind of stayed. Obviously there's a lot of bluegrass music and country music down in North Carolina, and I had been introduced actually to bluegrass music while I was still living in Jersey. There's a festival called Merle Fest down in North Carolina that a friend of mine from South Jersey took me to a few years before I graduated college. And so I went, I moved down here to North Carolina, and I went to that festival, and I was really in love. I was really in love with that kind of music, and as I got more settled in, I started playing in bands in Charlotte, North Carolina, and that's what ultimately led me to the upright bass and meeting Scott and Seth and the Avett Brothers.
Well, that's quite a journey there you have.
Yes, sir.
And so your music you had been doing when you lived up here, when you were in the bands, when you were playing guitar, it was more like rock bands, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I was in like punk rock bands when I was in high school and just out of high school, and then I played in I guess more like original, it was like, I mean, I wrote songs, and I had a band called Blue Green Gage for a few years, and that was kind of like folk, alternative folk rock, I guess. I mean, I was really into, I was really into, like, I started taking guitar lessons when I was 14, 15 years old because I wanted to play Bruce Springsteen songs. And then I got into high school, and I was really into everything from Sex Pistols to the Clash and the Ramones and all that kind of stuff. And then when I got out of high school and got into college, I got into the Grateful Dead. So I mean, I think that band, Blue Green Gage, kind of encompassed, all of those different influences and those things I liked. And then after that period when I was like really working hard at Stockton and trying to finally get my life together and get an education, I worked at WLFR as a DJ, and that's when I started playing bluegrass music, and more of the folk. Sometimes you say bluegrass or you say folk, and it feels like you're excluding a whole lot of other stuff. But I mean, for lack of a better word, that was the kind of music I got into in my college life. And so then when I moved south, I kind of took all of that with me. And what I found when I got to Charlotte, almost immediately, I started going out in Charlotte, and I noticed that original music was better accepted down there. It was tough being in an original band in South Jersey because you had Reds. I mean, that was pretty much it. I don't even know if Reds is still there. But that was the only place that really gave original music an outlet. I mean, I do believe it must have changed in the years since. I'm talking about the late 90s. But you had Reds, and you had a few other sports bars that would give you a shot to come and do your thing. But what I found immediately in North Carolina was there was a great acceptance, and people would go out to see live original music. And I remember calling my friends up in Jersey and being like, "You guys got to come down here. This is fertile soil. It's great down here."
Right. And then, of course, that's where you met the brothers and you joined their band. So was that like a musical? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I moved down there. I worked in the film business, and I worked between Charlotte and Atlanta for up until about 2000. And then I wanted to go back to school to study music because I really wanted to understand music. I looked around the film industry, and I saw a lot of really talented people that maybe weren't really happy, and I kind of said that you can make a lot of money working on movies, and I kind of thought to myself, well, do I want to make money and not have my soul, be happy and feel complete and satisfied, or do I want to do something that I think will satisfy my soul, but I won't make as much money? And so I went back to school because I wanted to be, a music teacher, like you teach music theory in college or something like that. And I went to Winthrop University in Rock Hill, South Carolina. I started going in 2000, and I was studying jazz guitar. And within my first week of classes, I bought an upright bass, and that's when I started taking bass lessons, studying upright bass, as well as studying the jazz guitar. And so about a year into my studies at Winthrop is when a guy I was in the jazz guitar program with knew Scott Avett, and he said that these guys were looking for an upright bass player, and that's how I got hooked up with them.
I see. And so what's it like then to collaborate with them, especially since they're brothers? How's that work out, the relationship, when you've got two people related and you were the third person? So how did that
It works out really well. I mean, they are brothers. But when I started playing with them in 2001, their family. If you get to know them and you get to know their parents, they bring you in. They take in strays, quite often, and they do a really good job at loving people and helping people out when they're in need. And they kind of, I was extended that courtesy and that kindness, and so our organization even today is a very unique organization where we have built, as we've brought more people in, with me, Scott, and Seth, and then we brought our road manager in, Jane Honeycutt, in 2003, and we brought our manager in, and we got our booking agent then, and then in 2006, we brought in our sound man, Justin Glanville. In 2007, we brought Joe Kwan into the mix, and we've kind of very slowly grown, and we've been very, everybody that we brought in, we brought in the person, not necessarily that they were super skilled in any one area, but we brought them in because of the people that they were, and that's how we've built our organization. our organization. It's very, people-centered, and it's very small. I mean, for what we're doing now at the level that we're performing and working at, we still have a very small organization.
And I guess musically, you clicked with the Avett. There's something, sort of a shared sensibility that you had that allowed, that has, helped this relationship really flourish.
Yeah. We definitely, there were connection points, early on. I mean, they're younger than me, so they came up and were more affected by the grunge movement and by Nirvana in the 90s, whereas I kind of missed that initially. I was into other things, but I was connected to the Ramones and the Clash and Woody Guthrie and Tom Waits and so Bob Dylan. So we had a lot of connection points that we shared early on. Even though there were things that we weren't connected, that we didn't appreciate at the time. It's funny because they didn't appreciate Bruce Springsteen or the Grateful Dead when I met them, and now they do. And I didn't appreciate, Soundgarden or Alice in Chains, and that kind of stuff, and now I do. So, but isn't that how relationships go, right?
Right. I noticed that they have mustaches and you definitely don't. So that sounds like another point of you haven't succumbed to the mustache and beard thing. That they sort of are fully sporting.
I can't stand. I've grown in the past 13 years, or my time with them. I've grown 2 beards, and I could grow a beard like it's nobody's business. I could grow a beard in about a month. That would be, Civil War worthy. But I can't stand it. I love being clean shaved. I like keeping short hair and clean shaved, and that feels good to me. And it's so funny because those guys are constantly experimenting with their facial hair and and their hair and this and that. But yeah, that's something we don't share.
Right. So now it's been interesting what's been happening musically. I guess since the 2009 album, last couple of albums, you've sort of you have this core sort of Americana sound that you've sort of been using as your base, but then it's sort of expanded. So can you talk about that, sort of the transition you've made over the last few years?
Well, the expansion's happened for a few reasons. One, we have become more capable on our instruments. We just, the longer you do something, the better you get at it, the more comfortable you feel experimenting. Another thing, we began working with Rick Rubin, producer Rick Rubin, and he helped us kind of understand the possibilities of the recording studio and the value in demoing recordings. And he kind of, not by any kind of dictation, but just by example, we have learned to take our demos as far as we can before we actually record something for an album. So we're more knowledgeable about what we're doing. We put a lot more time and effort into it. And then also we've expanded the live band over the years. So for years it was me, Scott, and Seth, and then it was me, Scott, and Seth, and Joe, and now we've got 7 people on stage. So we've and once you kind of we've got the material. We've got albums and albums. We got over 100 songs that we could play on any given night, and many were recorded at a time when it was 3 people. So you now we have power behind us, and we've got a great band, and then we just keep getting better, and so that allows us the opportunity to re-examine and go back over old material and give it new life, and it just our sonic potential seems endless at this point.
Yeah, and you had mentioned earlier in our call about all the different influences that you had and different influences that the Avetts have. So it sounds like because of this sort of slightly broader approach, you're able to sort of maybe tap into that more than when you first started, because it's not the sound is expanded and you can sort of reference some of those things maybe that you have in your